Google just released their best and most performant AI model, Gemini 3.1 Pro. And this is incredibly powerful all across the board. So in this video, I'm going to go over how and where to use it, some cool stuff it can do, and of course, we're going to review its specs, performance, and benchmarks compared with other models. Let's jump right in. Thanks to HubSpot for sponsoring this video. Alright, now at the time of this recording, 3.1 should already be available in the Gemini app. So if you select Pro, notice that it says it uses 3.1 Pro over here. So let's try out a few prompts. First, let's test out its creativity and generating new ideas. So I'm going to get it to develop an OS for mobile that's even better than Android or iOS. Include 8 apps on the home screen, explain what you designed, how things work, and your rationale behind it. And then under Tools, I'm going to select Canvas so that we can preview what it built in a side window. Let's press Run. Alright, so here's what it built. It's called Fluid OS. Here are the 8 core apps of this OS. So there's this Omni or top banner, which is the brain of the phone. I guess it's this one over here. So if I click into it, it's basically your unified AI agent. It reads your calendar, emails, location, proactively displaying exactly what you need to know right now, such as when your next meeting is. And then the next one is Thread. This is where it unifies all your messages, emails, and DMs and calls in one place. So here it says, why have separate apps for SMS, WhatsApp, and email? Thread unifies all your communications. And then next we have the Sense app, which aggregates all your biometric data from your smartwatch, phone sensors, etc. And then we also have Flow, which is like a universal media player. And then we also have Prism, which I guess is this one. So this is not just a camera, but an AR lens for real-time translation, text copying, visual search. And then we have Shift, which is this one, which is navigation. So this is like Google Maps, I guess, but it knows when you leave for work and proactively shows the traffic delay without you asking. And then we also have this Vault icon, which I guess is for security and keys, credit cards, passwords. And then we have this Home icon, which is for controlling your smart home. Now, there's no correct answer to this. This is just what it designed, but let me know how good this is. Do you think it's better than Android or iOS? Alright, here's another one of my standard tests. So I'm going to upload this image and let's get it to create a beautiful 3D animation from this image. Let's see how good it is at coding this up. Alright, and here is what I got. This pagoda actually looks really nice and detailed compared to other models. I've been testing out this prompt with all the other top models, and by far, Gemini 3.1 generates the most detailed version of this pagoda so far. Now, it's not perfect, it's still lacking like the rails and the windows and the roof tiles, plus, the cherry blossoms could look more detailed, but just from one prompt, this is already very good. In fact, Gemini 3.1 Pro is way better at 3D and spatial understanding. So here are some additional 3D generations from Gemini 3.1 Pro versus the previous Gemini 3. And as you can see, for all these examples, it's way more detailed and better quality. If you get it to create some SVG animations of different things, you can see that Gemini 3 Pro does these a lot better. Everything just looks a lot smoother and more detailed and more accurate compared to the previous version. Alright, next, let's see how good it is at composing music. But first, we need to make an interface for it to create the music. So first, let's get it to make a piano roll interface where I can drag and draw notes on the timeline. Let's press Run. Alright, so here's what I got at first. Let's play this to make sure it works. Alright, so the first version works, but of course, the real test is to get it to actually compose some really insane music. So next I wrote, show a powerful, expressive 32-bar piano opus rich in complexity, capturing the final performance of a master pianist. And then afterwards, here's my result. Let's play this. Actually, you can't really see this. Let me actually zoom out a bit so you can see all the notes, and then let's play this. That was actually really good. Everything sounds like pretty harmonious. There's no dissonance involved here. I tried the same test with another state-of-the-art model called JLM5, and it's a lot more incoherent. So this one actually sounds really good. It has some inherent music composition knowledge built into it. All right, next let's test how good it is at lighting physics. So here I'm getting it to develop this simulation featuring 3 metallic spheres because 2 spheres is already too easy. We have some other AI models that can already do this. And then it's going to be suspended above a street scene, use any publicly available 3D street view, and allow adjustable parameters such as reflectivity, roughness, and other material properties. Let's see what it generates. All right, so here's my first result. And the real test here is to see if the spheres are actually reflected within each other. So for the first iteration, it did not get this correct. So I put the spheres don't reflect in each other. And then afterwards, here is the final iteration. And as you can see, the spheres are indeed reflected within each other. So let's test out each sphere to make sure everything works. For this gold sphere, let's play around with the reflectivity, so that works. Let's also do roughness, so roughness also works. And then reflection brightness, that also works. We can also change the color, so let's change this to blue, for example, that also works. And then let's play with this chrome one in the middle, so reflectivity of this also works. Roughness also works, and notice that as I change the roughness, the reflections of this in the other spheres also change. And then afterwards, let's also play with reflection brightness, and that also works. Very nice. And then finally, let's play with the red metallic sphere to make sure that one works as well. And yes, all the settings do work. So in just 2 prompts, I made this fully functional, floating sphere simulation where I can change all these different parameters, and it looks great. Now, here are some really cool use cases of Gemini 3.1 Pro. I can upload a ton of these receipts and then ask it to parse all these receipts and add them to a spreadsheet with these columns: date, item, total, and currency. Let's press run. All right, and here's what I got. Indeed, it has given me all these items, and the currency is correct. And it even got the one trick receipt that was in Canadian instead of HKD. Very impressive. And then afterwards, we can click on export to sheets. And if I open this up, here is the result. Very nice. Now, because this can analyze images, let's input this Where's Waldo photo and ask it to find and circle Waldo in this photo. And yes, I'm going to use the Pro mode and then press run. Now, unfortunately, this was a very disappointing answer. It says that he's not actually in this picture, which is wrong. He is in the picture, so that's disappointing. And this is a classic hallucination example where it's just making this up. It got it completely wrong. Now, the really awesome thing about Gemini 3.1 is not only can it analyze images, but also video and audio. So what I'm going to do first is upload this explainer video of an earthquake simulation for Japan, and then ask it to create an app based on this video. Let me play you the video first. I want you to create an interactive earthquake visualization of Japan. So let's say we have a map of Japan like this. First, I want you to list or show me all the major cities in Japan on the map. And then there's going to be a left sidebar where I can adjust various settings like earthquake, magnitude, etc., etc. So these are the settings that I can adjust. And whenever I click somewhere on the map, so let's say I click here, then you would start to create an earthquake. So it's going to be an animation effect that slowly ripples and ripples all the way until it hits one of these cities. And based on the magnitude of the earthquake, I want you to calculate how severe the impact would be for each major city. So note that in my prompt, I did not specify with text any details of the app. I didn't specify Japan or earthquakes or anything like that. It needs to figure out everything by itself from actually watching the video. Let's press run and see what it generates. All right, and here is what I got. How cool is that? Let's actually see if this works. I can click anywhere on the map to trigger a simulated earthquake, so let's click on here, and here we go. Notice that it even automatically pulled up a map of Japan for me. Next, let's increase the magnitude of this. Very nice. Let's make the magnitude lighter, and you can see that doesn't really affect any of the major cities. Let's increase this to a whopping magnitude of 9, and then let's set it somewhere over here, and here is what happens. How cool is that? So indeed, it followed exactly what I specified from my video. really cool. Speaking of Google's Gemini, if you find yourself spending hours manually researching topics but only scratching the surface, I've got something that will completely transform how you approach research and information gathering. Take a look at how to do 10 hours of research in 20 minutes. The Marketer's Guide to Google Gemini and Notebook LM by HubSpot. I put it in the description below for you to download for free. This guide will help you become a top 10% expert in any topic in days instead of months, by leveraging AI research tools that compress what used to take hours into just minutes of work. You'll be able to process more sources than your entire team and spot patterns across information that humans typically miss. Inside, you'll find step-by-step instructions for using Gemini's deep research capability to gather comprehensive information from dozens of sources, plus how to use Notebook LM to transform that raw data into actionable intelligence through AI-powered summaries and even personalized audio overviews. My favorite section is where they outline 11 practical applications for this research stack, including everything from content creation to competitive intelligence and crisis communication planning. The examples show exactly how to implement these tools in real marketing scenarios. This resource was made by HubSpot, who's sponsoring this video. Download it for free via the link in the description below. Alright, here's another example. You can easily get this to create personalized educational content for you or your kids. For example, let's get it to make a fun educational course on chemistry for kids, consisting of multiple lessons, include real images and interactive visual exercises. Alright, here is what we got. So it included 3 lessons, and it does use real images. Let's start the first lesson. So here we need to add some hydrogen and oxygen to build a water molecule. So let me do this really quickly. And here we go. Here is a water molecule created. So everything is very smooth. The animation is very seamless. Next, let's try the next lesson, which is solid, liquid, gas. Here it failed to load the image. And then here we need to select the appropriate state of matter. So let me just randomly fill this out, and that works. And then finally, the next lesson is on crazy reactions, so let's mix some ingredients in the beaker, and here's what happens. Let's click mix again. This time let's mix vinegar with dish soap, and nothing happened. And then let's try dish soap and food color. You get magical colorful bubbles. So that's just one quick example. This is just from one prompt, but of course you can prompt it further to make more lessons or make things more detailed for whatever you want to learn. All right, next let's see how good it is at coding up games. So I'm gonna write make a 2D platformer game similar to Super Mario. Make it look amazing. Put everything in a standalone HTML file. Use publicly available assets, models, and effects for the game. All right, and here's what I got. Let's press start game. And you know, this looks really similar to Super Mario. It even has sound effects. What happens if I fall down here? And I do get a game over, so everything works as expected. So, you know, in just one prompt, it can create a fully functional 2D platformer game with enemies, with coin collection, with sound effects, and of course I can prompt it further to add multiple levels or to customize how the game works. Now, as I'll talk about in a second, Gemini 3.1 is incredibly good at scientific knowledge and reasoning. So here's a medical example. Analyze the molecular pathology of dystrophin loss in this muscular dystrophy, compare therapies, evaluate long-term functional outcomes from recent trials. Include nice tables and charts. And this time I'm going to turn off canvas and let's just press run and see what it gives us. And here is what I got. So here it gives me the molecular pathology of this dystrophin loss, etc., etc. And then here is a comparative analysis of DMD therapies with a very nice and thorough table, jam-packed with information. You can even export this to sheets. And then here we have some long-term functional outcomes. What I like about Gemini 3.1 is it's quite concise. There's no BS, there's no filler stuff. It just answers my question very directly and gives me the information that I need. And then here's another table visualizing the functional divergence. You can also export this to sheets, and that's pretty much it. So very short and concise. There's no correct answer to this. Every top AI model out there can help you, synthesize information. So it really depends on what vibe you're looking for. It seems like Gemini 3.1 is a lot more concise, whereas some other AI models are a lot more detailed and thorough. So those are some of my quick demos. Next, here are some specs on Gemini 3 Pro. As you can see here, it can take in text, images, audio, and video. Plus it has a context window of up to 1 million tokens. This is basically how much information you can fit into your prompt at once, and Gemini has by far the widest window of 1 million tokens, which is roughly 700,000 words or a medium-sized code base or over an hour of video. Many of the other top AI models have a much smaller context window. And then here it says the architecture of 3.1 is based on Gemini 3. This is just like a marginal improvement. It's nothing huge. And then here it says currently you can access this via the Gemini app, which is where I showed you most of my demos in this video. Plus you can also already access it in Notebook LM, which is a really helpful platform for you to learn things and generate study notes. And then for developers, this is also available via Google's AI Studio, Gemini CLI, as well as Google's IDE, which is called Anti-Gravity, which is very similar to Cursor, but it's just powered by Gemini. And then it's also available in Android Studio and these other enterprise platforms. Next, let's look at how good this actually is. So here are some benchmarks. Here they're comparing it with the top models out there, including Opus 4.6 Thinking Max plus GPT 5.2 Extra High plus GPT 5.3 Codex Extra High. But as you can see across most of these benchmarks, Gemini 3.1 Pro is just better. So for humanities last exam, it scored the highest without any tool use. This is a benchmark that tests an AI's knowledge on some really obscure stuff. For example, here are like a few sample questions from this humanities last exam benchmark. Most people won't know the answer to this. It's some really deep and obscure scientific knowledge. But as you can see, Gemini 3.1 Pro, without any tool use, without, doing web search or anything like that, scored by far the highest. So this has a lot of world knowledge jam-packed into it. And then for Arc AGI 2, this is a crazy lead. I don't think this table does it justice, so here's another table of the Arc AGI 2 leaderboard for your reference, and the y-axis is the score or how good it is. You can see Gemini 3.1 Pro is all the way up here, even beating Opus 4.6, which is covered by this label. It's like somewhere over here. And then the rest of the models are just like way down here. Now, why is this so important? If you're not familiar with the Arc AGI 2 benchmark, this is basically how good an AI is at solving visual puzzles, but it's more than that. So here are some examples. It's first given a question-answer pair. For example, here, the correct answer is all the blue squares should gravitate to the left, whereas all the red squares should gravitate to the right, like this. And then it's given a new question and it needs to figure out the answer from this pattern. Now, this isn't just about solving visual puzzles because for an AI model, it can't really learn new things. So after training, its configuration of weights and parameters are fixed. So it's really hard for an AI model to actually learn and absorb new patterns and then apply it to its answers like this. And that's why most models rank pretty poorly on this benchmark. But as you can see, GPT 3.1 scored all the way up here, so it seems like it has some emergent ability to actually learn and absorb new patterns that it has never seen before in its training data. In addition, it just absolutely dominated this GPQA Diamond benchmark. This is like graduate level scientific knowledge. It's also incredibly good at terminal bench and other agentic coding benchmarks, and it's also really good at long context performance. In other words, if you feed it a ton of stuff up to like 700,000 words, it's still able to analyze everything and give you the information you're looking for very accurately. Now, these are just some of their self-reported benchmarks. Next, let's look at some independent evaluators as well. So here's an independent leaderboard, and as you can see, Gemini 3.1 Pro is by far the most intelligent model according to their intelligence index. It far surpasses Opus 4.6 Max as well as GPT 5.2 Extra High, making it currently the best model out there you can use. Not only that, but it's also very cost efficient. So even though it's smarter than Claude Opus or GPT 5.2 or Grok 4, notice that it's even cheaper in price, making it the most performant and the most cost-efficient closed model out there. Now, interestingly, if you look at this other leaderboard called LM Arena, then Gemini 3.1 Pro does not perform as well as Opus 4.6 in terms of text. And then in terms of coding, it's actually ranked all the way down here, even below GPT 5.2. Same with vision, it even underperforms the previous Gemini 3 Pro. So I'm getting some mixed results between different leaderboards, and that's why it's important to look at multiple leaderboards to get a good sense of how good a model actually is. For other leaderboards like SweBench, And LiveBench, unfortunately, they haven't released Gemini 3.1 Pro yet at the time of this recording. But another really awesome feature about Gemini 3.1 is that it has a really low hallucination rate. So here is the artificial intelligence omniscience hallucination rate. And as you can see, Gemini 3.1 hallucinates way less than some of the other top models out there, like Claude Opus 4.6, as well as GPT 5.2. So it's less likely to make stuff up and give you the wrong answer. Although this still happens like a certain percentage of the time. If you do want a model with the lowest hallucination rate, then the best one to use is the open source GLM5, which was released last week. This is really good. One thing to note is that this score of 50% does not mean it hallucinates 50% of the time. This just means it got 50% wrong on this benchmark. Alright, so that sums up my review of Gemini 3.1 Pro. This is currently one of the most intelligent and performant models that you can use right now, and it's already available in the Gemini app. So try it out and let me know what you think of it. As always, I will be on the lookout for the top AI news and tools to share with you. So if you enjoyed this video, remember to like, share, subscribe, and stay tuned for more content. Also, there's just so much happening in the world of AI every week. I can't possibly cover everything on my YouTube channel. So to really stay up to date with all that's going on in AI, be sure to subscribe to my free weekly newsletter. The link to that will be in the description below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.